Today I want to walk you through one of my favorite n8n workflows, and it is a fully automated workflow that takes care of generating a report like this, which is also accessible under a specific URL, which means if you want to consume this report, you don't have to go to the workflow, execute it, and instead you simply visit the page, and the workflow itself takes care of triggering all the nodes that take care of fetching the data and also eventually preparing it for the dashboard, which is completely interactive and also dynamic based on the data that is here. So in case you want to run this report for another website, this is quite simple since you only have to configure it in a simple spreadsheet. And before we have a look into the architecture of this workflow itself, let's talk quickly about what kind of problem this specific workflow is solving. And if you're doing SEO for clients, then most likely you visit on a regular basis Google Search Console. Maybe you export the data, analyze it further in Google Sheets, or use an external tool, which might be quite expensive. And if you're doing it data-driven, then most likely you're also comparing the current period with the previous period to exactly know if there's a positive or negative trend, which will allow you to then focus on sites that are losing traffic in order to improve them again. And this workflow here does it completely automatically for you. So if we have a look into the structure of it, we have first of all the report date and also the two periods that are used for fetching all the data. And as you can see, we have also always a delta. So compared to the previous period, is there a positive or negative trend? And the first four KPI cards are for the overall traffic, and then we have traffic by devices. And all the data here is coming from the Google Search Console, so it's actually the most accurate data you can get for your website for the Google search engine. And if you're running an international website, let's say with content written in English, then most likely we'll also get traffic from different countries, which you can analyze here. After that, we have the keyword position distribution, so it's not tracking exactly the keywords, and instead it's giving you an indication if the website is appearing for more keywords in general. So as you can see, it's categorized in top 3, 4 to 10, 11 to 20, and below 20. And these three cards here show you in general if your website is appearing for more keywords in general without tracking it explicitly, because the next table takes care of tracking all the keywords you want to rank for. So this table here can be configured by adding keywords to the spreadsheet, and we will also cover that in a second. But in a nutshell, this table shows you for the keywords you want to rank for, the daily position that was pulled from the Google Search Console. As you can see, we have here the keyword Mathematic for the country Germany, the device is desktop, and I know that there was during the period no position movement, so I'm still in the top 3. I will also show you later how to add another keyword, and then we will run the report again. So that first of all, I have more data to demo, but then you also know how to configure it. And the last part, which is in my opinion the most important part, is the section performance by pages, because this section tells you exactly which pages are losing traffic compared to the previous period. So we have here categories such as low performer, improved click-through rate, stable, and in case there's a page with growth, then there would be also another category. But let's say you want to quickly find out which pages need your attention, then you can simply change here the category to low performer, and then exactly this page needs to be updated because the performance is worse compared to the previous period. That's it in a nutshell regarding this report. And now let's have a look into the architecture. And the workflow itself gets triggered by webhook, and if we have a look into it, then we can see that first of all I delete some data because here's also sensitive information like web tokens, email address, and so forth. But the thing that is important is that we can also set a query directly in the URL. So for instance, here we have client and then the website, and that's also exactly what we have here, because this value is then used in the next node that takes care of fetching configuration data. So as an example, here the workflow gets triggered. After that, we get client information, and for that we have a filter here on the domain column. And if I execute it, then we can see that I get information such as the domain fields that are used in the report itself. As an example, first name, last name, but also the BigQuery tables, which are really important because the data is pulled from there. So here we have the search data URL impression table, but also search data site impression table, because we need both tables to generate the KPIs which we have here. As an example, the search data site BigQuery table is used to generate the overall KPIs because we know exactly how many clicks, impressions we receive for our website. But for instance, for the keyword rank tracking, we are using the search data URL impression because we know exactly for which queries is the website appearing in Google, and also what are the KPIs such as clicks, impressions, click-through rate, and of course also the daily position for the query. After getting all the client information, we continue with the next nodes where we get first of all metadata such as the last one. But what is more important is also that we get the keywords and countries. And as I said, this report here also features rank tracking. And in case I want to add more keywords to rank tracking, then I can simply do it here. So this is the configuration sheet. We have here the domain, table names from the BigQuery tables, in case you want to send this report also by mail. Then we have here the recipient. And to make this workflow also usable for websites with a lot of traffic, but also for websites with low traffic, you can set here thresholds for the impressions and click-through rate in order to filter out noisy data. Then we have also a second table, which is the configuration report table. And as you can see, we have here the company name, company address, website, email, and so forth. And these values here are used for customizing the report itself. So in case you want to change that, then you can simply replace these values. And then, for instance, the company name, email address, or website will be updated directly in the report. So in the footer, we have the information that has been pulled dynamically from the sheet here. You can also change that just for the demo. And now let's also add another keyword. So let's say n8n Google Search Console for the country Germany. Then I can simply add here a row. And of course, if you're using this workflow for multiple websites, then you can add for every website a specific sheet so that the track keywords are also separated. And the workflow takes care of always using the right sheet for the right client. Now let's rerun the workflow. And as I said, we just have to open the page and then refresh it. And as you can see, first of all, the footer has changed because we changed it from Mathematic to demo. And if we now search also for the keyword, which is n8n Google Search Console, then in case I'm ranking for it, then we'll see data. So n8n Google, then we can see now we have also data for another keywords that we want to monitor. So that's it regarding the configuration and also keyword rank tracking. And now let's continue with the other nodes, which are used for pulling the data from the BigQuery table. So we have specific SQL queries that are dynamic. So they also use variables in order to pull data from the right table for the right time frame, also for the right keywords. As an example, this is a query that is used for getting the key KPIs, which are at the top right here. And then we have also other queries that get the data for the performance by devices, countries. And then there's also the complex query for analyzing which pages lost traffic or general visibility compared to the previous period. So we have here the node get performance by pages. And last but not least, the two nodes that are responsible for getting the keyword insights. So for this specific plot here, and the other one is responsible for the keyword ranking movement. And the great thing about such workflows is that you are not limited. So if you want to track 10 keywords, then you can do that. If you want to track 100 keywords, then you can do that. And if you want to use this workflow for 100 websites, then this works as well. So let's continue with the other nodes in a nutshell. I have to move it first correctly here. And after pulling all the data, so here we get the data from the BigQuery tables, we merge everything, and then we use specific code nodes to generate the HTML string. So the complete report here is generated by all the code nodes, which are here. So for the KPI section, for the plots, tables, and so forth. So to give you an example, here we have generate overall traffic KPI. So here we have code. We receive data from the merge node, which is here. And for generating the section here, we are using the data that was pulled by this node here. All the other nodes follow the same approach. So data for the performance by devices is then consumed by the code node that will generate the HTML, which is in this case a table. So this one here. And this process is then done for all the data that we pulled from the BigQuery tables and eventually merged again to put everything into an HTML template, because we also want to be able to configure the styling. So in case you want to change the accent color, primary color, or secondary color, then you can simply change it once here. And then in the next run, the workflow will use your own colors. Let's quickly also cover another important part, which is how can you make this dashboard accessible for yourself and also for your clients. And for that, I'm using Cloudflare, which means if someone wants to visit this specific dashboard, they have to get a code first, or they can also use sign in with Google, which means before they are able to access the dashboard, they have to go through a login process. And in order to make this dashboard only accessible by specific users, I have also added a policy to my application. So right now it's empty because I don't want to reveal any sensitive information. But what I did is that I created a new policy. Let's say you can also call it allow me or another descriptive name. And then the important part is here. So I can add a rule and I want to include only users with a certain email address. So let's say they have a Gmail address and they want to be able to access dashboard, then I can simply add their email address here. And if this person is trying to access this dashboard and is using this email address, then it will be able to continue. And if not, then the access will be blocked, which means on a high level, the authentication looks like this. So on the left, it is without Cloudflare. So then anyone would be able to trigger this webhook and then also consume the data, which might be in this case, not that of a problem. But let's say you're also using a large language model to analyze some data, then anyone can simply trigger the workflow, which will consume tokens and you have to pay for it. And the same for the BigQuery node. So whenever you're using an external API, most of the time it's also a paid service. So at the end of the day, it might be possible that someone will find your webhook and then maybe start an attack, which can be, if you don't set any limits, really expensive. And the setup with Cloudflare and also with the Google authentication looks like this. So the user tries to visit the dashboard and instead of getting directly access to the n8n instance, it goes first through Cloudflare. Then we have the Google authentication. And if the person is using the right email address, then the user will be redirected to the dashboard. And if not, then the access will be blocked. It's also possible to make it even more secure by going to the webhook and then add another layer of security by setting here the authentication, for instance, to JWT off or also header off in case you want to use, for instance, an API key or in general, a unique identifier for your clients. So in general, there are a lot of ways to secure your webhooks in order to be able to let your clients access their dashboards without any headaches. And in case you're interested in more workflows like this, then feel free to check out my community because I share all my workflows there. And of course, this workflow here is also available within the community next to other workflows, which are primarily for search engine optimization, like content optimization, content creation, content gap analysis, but also basic things which usually are really time consuming, such as Google indexing and so forth. And if you have any questions regarding this workflow here, or if you want to have a deep dive on the setup on how to secure your webhooks, then feel free to leave it to the comment. And with that, we will hear each other in the next video.